Hi everyone, we are back again with Professor Christopher Barratt in a new episode of Med the Expert. Today we will discuss male contraceptive. We know there are so many options that the female can take for contraceptive, but there are only two options for the male. Professor Barratt and his team has been working to find a compound that can act as a male contraceptive that the male can take. So we will ask him about the progress on this project and why do we need in the first place to use male contraceptive while there are so many other options for the contraceptive that the female can take.
So, Professor Barratt, we know that there are so many options for the contraceptive that the female can take, but why does the world need male contraceptive?
Oh, well, there's a number of different reasons, I think, for that. First of all, really available at the moment, there's only really two forms of male contraception. One is vasectomy, where you need an operation, and that obviously has significant limitations. And the other is the condom, and that obviously is related to the event of sexual intercourse, and therefore that's a significant negative impact for contraception. And there's been no real developments in reversible male contraception since 1450 BC. And of course, that was the development of the condom in reality. Right. So we need to think about a partnership between the male and the female for contraception. And therefore, the male needs to start to take a slightly larger proportion of that responsibility for contraception. Mm-hmm. So I think that there is a very clear need for the male to become more involved. If we think, why do we need contraception? Then there's a massive number of unwanted pregnancies and terminations as a result of that. The effect on the female, as well as, of course, dangers of mortality. So there's a very big need to do that, to be able to give choice to couples. And at the moment, it's pretty well much reliant on the female. And many females can take, for example, hormonal contraception. So I think the time is right to develop new efforts in male contraception.
Right. I know you are working now on a huge project in this area. So how close we are to start finding contraceptive?
Yeah. So the that have been done so far are primarily manipulation of hormones, and those attempts have pretty well much failed. And they fail because it's difficult to manipulate the hormones and not have an adverse effect on the body. And there's side effects such as mood disorders, increased, and there's issues of developments of rashes on the skin. There's issues of weight gain, for example. Mm-hmm. And also, importantly, it doesn't completely reduce spermatogenesis to zero. So hormonal methods are unlikely to be, at least in the current forms, of any value. And they've been going since the 1970s. So think differently about how we can do this. So the approach we've used, which is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, is realistically to try and look at a series of compounds, big compound libraries, to see how they may affect sperm function. So what we do there is we add these compounds to motile human spermatozoa in large numbers, thousands of compounds a day, to then see how they may negatively affect the sperm function. And then what you can do is go back to the compound if it has an effect, see what it is and tweak it and twist it a little bit and perhaps make it more effective. And at the same time, you can test how safe that compound is. So that's the approach that we're trying to do.
Yeah, because men may wonder if their maybe sexual desire will be affected if you use hormone like testosterone or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that's where historically there's been issues with male contraception. So, and there's other negative effects of taking testosterone replacements, the potential for metabolic disorders as well. So it's unlikely that manipulation of hormones itself is going to work. So what you've then got to do is attack spermatogenesis or attack the sperm once they're formed in the epididymis. So our approach is to try and look at sperm once they're formed. So we're not trying to cut off the factory of sperm. We're trying to leave that alone. We're just trying to work out that when you produce sperm, we want you to be the sperm being the same numbers, so it doesn't affect your hormones at all. It doesn't affect any of the physiology. It just stops the cells. And that's what we're trying to do.
Oh, Okay, so you just stop the,
Yeah,
motile sperm.
so we'd stop them. So they may swim a little bit, for example, but they have no power.
Okay.
Or we may be changing the way the acrosome reacts, so they might be blowing their head open prematurely. So we're basically going to stop their function. The problem is if you stop the factory, you then have lots of negative consequences on the man. So we're not going to stop spermatogenesis. We're going to keep spermatogenesis the same. So we know from looking at subfertile couples that there are many men who produce lots of sperm, but actually they're functional. And there's nothing wrong with these men. So basically, it's trying to use that type of infertility phenotypes to look at how we can develop contraception.
Yeah, I think maybe this way is immediate or faster than using hormone as suppression, because I've read some articles saying that they used hormone, but you need maybe 3 or 4 months then
You
to see a result.
You do. You've got to suppress the whole thing. Whereas in this, in theory, what we're going to do is try and stop the sperm function. So in theory, of course it's a theory, it's not sure, is that you would get the sperm cells and stop their function. And you could do that quite quickly, in theory. Maybe you could do that over a couple of days. Now, if you could do that, that'd be great. In fact, maybe you could do it over a couple of hours if you've been really optimistic. But basically, you haven't got that big delay. And I think that's a plus as well.
Yeah, so maybe last thing, how long should we wait to make women happy? Because I think they are waiting for this.
I think there's a lot of people waiting for this. And I think we've got a 2-year grant from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we're hoping that we would have some interesting progress after. I mean, we can't say any more than that. If things go well, so for example, if when we're screening these compounds, we find a compound that's currently in trials, but for something completely different, so it could be drug repurposing, for example, then that would have a lot of safety data associated with it. So in theory, that would accelerate the program dramatically. So if that's the case, then that would be really exciting. We could really push on and do progress. So that's our first prong of attack, is to use chemicals that are compounds that are currently either going to be available or have been available. So we're going to repurpose it. And the classic example of drug repurposing is Viagra. So originally that was for heart cardiovascular disorders, and of course it has a substantial side effect. And that side effect was then repurposed. So basically that's an example.
Right. Yeah, that's great. So just keep us in touch and updated. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.